In Texas, there is no bigger community activity than high school football.
Greg was one of the best players.
The momentum he had is unlike most students ever experience.
I got a text message with Greg Kelly's photo, and it just said, "Do you know this kid?"
There was a crime committed, according to this 4-year-old boy.
I just turned numb. Like, this can't be true, this can't be true.
And that's when a second victim came forward.
Will the jury find the defendant guilty?
This trial was a sham.
Everyone's saying you got the wrong guy.
Mr. Kelly has lied.
Did you take a lie detector test?
Passed every question but one.
We've been on this journey to figure out what the truth is, and it's proven difficult at every turn.
Initially, I was pretty convinced of his innocence. Now I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Let's get to that co-main event if we can. Kelvin Gastelum at 185 in his return fight to since Darren Till, losing to that one, by split decision. He loses to Jack Hermansson. And talk about quick, dominant finishes, BC. I guess he had the lateral drop, so that was nice. But go first on this one, please, good sir. This was a very bad loss. Heel hook victory for Jack Hermansson in, I think, 90 seconds or something like that. It was pretty quick. Okay, that's 3 losses in a row, BC, for a guy like Kelvin Gastelum, who just a year or two ago was a title contender. So the question for you is, does this loss prove that at 185, Kelvin Gastelum is not elite?
I mean, the evidence is too damning. Yes, and I hate saying that. Look, I don't have a future champion Kevin Lee like lustful relationship with this man's future ceiling, okay? But I do believe in Kelvin Gastelum. I was cage side UFC 236 for that Ultimate Adesanya war, in which I think that night he finally, shed all the crap that got in his way and figured out on one night how to be the best he could be. He didn't win, but it was a massive stock riser. But he can't put it together, Luke. I don't know if I'm going to sit here and say, God, you should have been a welterweight all along. Go back and get disciplined. I don't even know if that's true. I don't know his body. But he just can't seem to put it together. This is a disastrous loss. And the only way that I hedge that slightly is that he's 28. And look, in the UFC, you can take learning lessons from losses. And if you have a name, you're always 2 wins away from being back in there. But where we stand in a crowded title picture in this division with, the Whitaker-Till fight coming up, with Costa, with Cannonier coming back from injury, this is a really bad loss to be thrown back to the pack. You saw the shape Kelvin Gastelum came in with, had the little man bun too. I think that showed me an extreme level of focus and belief that he needed this win, and he did. And Luke, he didn't lose it in a factor which outright told us he's not elite. Like, I have to say he's not elite because Bill Parcells told us you are what your record is, right? Like, there's only so much you can defend a guy with that type of streak lately. But this was one of those losses where it almost didn't count. It's Frank Mir against Brock Lesnar 1. We didn't see out of this matchup everything we were supposed to have seen. But that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's an L. And, I can no longer, I have to remove myself from the Kelvin Gastelum train for a while. Young enough to still make a difference, Luke, but, his prime window, it's got a lot of missteps during it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the funny part about it to me. It's like folks are like, oh, well, when John Jones came up through light heavyweight, he was beating a lot of older guys, which is really totally oversold. Because I actually did the math on it. The average age was about 29 and a half through the top 10 of that division. So it's just not even true. But let's just say for a second that it was true. Okay, well, after he beat all of those older dudes, then he beat all of the younger ones too, right? I mean, oops, is that my phone? In my pocket?
They're calling you,
the
Luke.
alarm going off. That's fun.
Come on, Luke.
I know.
This is a professional show, okay?
What am I doing here? What am I doing
sub
here?
you out and put in Jay so quickly, okay?
Okay, so here's the deal that I would add to this. He went ahead and beat him anyway. So in this particular case, you can look back at Gastelum's wins over Vitor Belfort. That got turned into a no contest. But then Bisping, Tim Kennedy, the Jacare win was a little bit dicey, that kind of a thing. So it tells you that there is a bit of a difference between what you can do against the sort of the older guard and the newer guard. That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is he elite at 185? Not at this moment. Now, at 28, which you noted, maybe he can figure it out and get back to that point again. Okay, that's certainly possible as well. So I leave that up. But I would say he is the victim here of something. Not that he hasn't made his own missteps. But honestly, I just don't think he's big enough to be competing with the modern middleweight guys. Now, Jared Cannonier's not the biggest guy either, and he beat Jack Hermansson. So it's not, an every size fits all kind of argument. But I just don't think, like, against Chris Weidman, he was too big. Against a big, strong guy like Jack Hermansson, yes, Gastelum can have these moments, but it's hard for him to sustain it. And when a guy like Jack Hermansson early in a fight is cranking on a heel hook, and a pretty good one at that, I'm going to have a discussion about it on MMA Morning Combat Dissected. Here's what I mean, BC. This is why there should be a 175-pound weight class, which means there should be a 165-pound weight class. If we had 165 and you could bump welterweight up to 175 and then 185, I think you would have a case where he wouldn't have to kill himself to get to 170. He'd have that sometimes 6-pound allowance going up to 176, and you'd get the most out of a guy who is clearly quite talented, who is clearly quite special, but constantly up against a situation that is just not advantageous for him. And so to me, the big picture is here, yes, he's talented, but I don't think 185 is a home for him. I think they should have a 165 and a 175, and I've done the work on this, BC. I've done a draft to see what would happen if you pulled from 155 and then you pulled from 170 and you made one down the middle. It can be done, and you can still have 3 very, very talented divisions. But as long as that's not the case, honestly, Kelvin Gastelum is stuck between a rock and a hard place.
He is straight up, and we should be talking more about Jack Hermansson's, 5 wins in 6 fights, and he just beat a big name. But again, it wasn't one of those wins, Luke, where I'm fully satisfied.
Hold on, BC. Hold on. Answer this question for me, because I think it will get to it. What would you say is Kelvin Gastelum's best win?
You're right. That's the problem. The resume, right? The Bisping knockout doesn't really count. The Jacare split decision was a little, close and wonky. When you don't have that one hit on your, that you can go back on, it's hard to lean on. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, what has he done? Is there a bigger welterweight win I'm forgetting before he was forced out? No.
Two of the big ones would be the Rick Story wins and then the Jake Ellenberger win.
Neither of those feel like big wins in 2020, although I certainly respect how tough those guys were at those times. Yeah, this guy that, the people that said he got by on reputation to a degree, are in what you've seen at times, the flashes of brilliance. It's true. There's something missing there, and maybe that's the only way it connects with the Kevin Lee conversation, where I see the full body of talent, but something's missing from making that step to the next level.
Do you like my idea of, UFC is going to tell me to pound sand, but what do you make of 165, 175, especially coming from the boxing
certainly
world?
Like the spirit of that idea, Luke, because it seems to be a black hole where you can get caught in the middle there, being, too small, too big for the respective weight class. But they have 8 divisions. And as I've said it before, as a boxing fan, right, we think back to the glory days of 8 divisions, 1 champion per division. You always knew who was the man. Now in boxing, it's just such a bastardized reality that I hesitate the idea, because then you go, okay, let's add 65, we'll bump up middleweight up to, or welterweight up to 75, and hey, we might as well do a 95, and hey, how about 215 junior heavyweight? No, get the frick out of here. Let's keep it where we are now. Look, you're going to have some guys where it's heartbreaking, okay? It is what it is, right? There's going to be small heavyweights who can't make 205 either. You do have to adjust and figure it out, Luke, okay?
Yeah, and by the way, to be clear, BC, I'm not arguing we should make 165 and then ultimately welterweight 175 on account of Kelvin Gastelum. Like, hey, let's do Kelvin a solid. I don't mean that. Like, if you're going to make new weight classes, you have to have a very good, broad, sweeping reason to do it, and we can have that debate. I just mean to say, let's assume for a second we were all convinced 165 was a good idea. My argument is Kelvin would, I think, be a very strong beneficiary of that. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, I don't know, man, if he can find a way to get back down to 170, and when I say that, I don't mean, hey, just try it out. No, I mean like with a real nutritionist, a real discipline, real game plan, and so that you can reliably make it every time that you need to, including, by the way, 170 on the nugget for title opportunities, then I think he should go back to welterweight. At 28 years old, there's still a lot of time there. I think he'd be very competitive with some of the Colby Covingtons and Jorge Masvidals and some of the other figures in that division. So I think that's the best opportunity for him, Luke, assuming he can get that right. BC, very quickly.
Quickly here, because
yes.
Jay's going to pass a kidney stone here, but people want to hear about this type of stuff. Would you be okay with a middle ground in which the UFC kept the BMF title around and made it feel like a quasi title and we only tried to match action fighters in it, but in reality it was kind of a low-key 165 title because for the most part that's where the majority of these quote-unquote BMFers live. I mean, look, if you made a list of the 15 guys you would most want in a BMF fight, what, 12 of them would be between lightweight and welterweight. You are right around there, you know, or maybe even above welterweight, closer to middleweight. So that might be the better direction for a Kelvin Gastelum who can put in fun brawls but can't seem to figure out the full picture.
I'm not convinced that if he can't get things together, he couldn't be a title contender again at 170. I think he probably could. And I don't hate that idea you brought up, but to me it's like either do 165 the right way or just don't. You know, I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Some sort of ghost title that kind of means 165, but not really. I don't know. It's not for me. All right, let's jump to point 3 here.
Luke, can I hijack your show again? Jay's carrying a loaded weapon right now, and we're just burying the lead. Are you going to keep it going or what?
Yes, for just a second. Let's run through this a little bit more.
In Texas, there is no bigger community activity than high school football.
Greg was one of the best players.
The momentum he had is unlike most students ever experience.
I got a text message with Kelly's photo, and it just said, "Do you know this kid?"
There was a crime committed, according to this 4-year-old boy.
I just turned numb. Like, this can't be true, this can't be true.
And that's when a second victim came forward.
The jury found the defendant guilty.
This trial was a sham.
Everyone's saying you got the wrong guy.
Mr. Kelly has lied.
Did you take a lie detector test?
Passed every question but one.
We've been on this journey to figure out what the truth is, and it's proven difficult at every turn.
Initially, I was pretty convinced of his innocence. Now I wouldn't be surprised either way.